Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. It looks like it's just me today. Woo woo. So, I get to educate you today about estrogen and adrenal hormones. We're talking all about the Hormone Symphony, and we're doing this because we are leading up to our October 21st 10-day hormone detox. So, we believe here at Cultivate in doing regular pauses on our food intake and kind of regular resets to get things kind of settled, have time without alcohol, have time without sugar, have time without some of those things, come back into balance. One of the things that our hormone systems are very sensitive to are diet changes and stress. And one of the ways that we take in stress is if we're eating and drinking and doing things that are a little bit like rushed and harried. So our detoxes are times where we really get to like reset and focus on things. This October detox starts October 21st. It's all about hormone balancing, eating foods that are hormone supportive and that help your hormone detox pathways. A lot of it's, whether we're working on gut health or skin health, a lot of it is the same, but the liver is a very important detox organ when it comes to hormone detoxification. And estrogen, today we're talking about, estrogen is all the rage right now in women's medicine, which is so beautiful. We led with talking about progesterone yesterday. So if you missed the progesterone talk, the progesterone is such an important piece of the puzzle that isn't spoken about quite as much certainly in the mainstream, but estrogen is, and estrogen's finally getting her time in the sun. Estrogen is a hormone that the ovary is mostly responsible for making. The adrenal gland will make some, and fat cells will make some. So women who struggle with their weight or central obesity or have more weight issues will tend to have some issues of estrogen dominance, things like bleeding, over heavy bleeding, sometimes endometriosis. Estrogen dominance is a big, I would say, quote unquote, problem in our society in general with younger girls. And that is a lot of due to processed sugars and saturated fats and trans fats and bad diet choices that a lot of children are exposed to. I don't know if you have teenagers here, but if you do, you'll know that it's always a battle to try to get them to remember that green foods are medicine and that crumble cookies are not actually a food group and blah, 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 on and on. So as we age, estrogen wears down. So what you heard me say yesterday was as we age, the first symptoms that really come up tend to be thyroid related and progesterone related, anxiety, sleep issues. The estrogen deficiency symptoms, and this is, again, I think the one theme that we need to really understand is individuality. So if you're talking to your friends or siblings or sisters and you have a totally different journey, that's because you do, because you had a totally different life, and that hormones really tell the story of our life. They're impacted by our genetics, but they're very impacted by our epigenetics, what we do to consume, what we're doing. And that's why we love detoxes to help reset hormones and support hormones and get everybody going. So either if you're on a fertility journey or if you're on HRT, doing this detox is going to be really supportive to just kind of help to get things flowing and flushed. Back to estrogen. So the ovary is making estrogen. Estrogen's in charge of making things essentially juicy, is kind of the way I like to think about it. Its job is to grow, its primary job is to grow the endometrial lining in the follicular phase of the cycle. So once you're done with your menstrual withdrawal bleeding, you're bleeding in the cycle, the estrogen is rising up until ovulation. It's peaking right before ovulation. And ovulation is often the time when women feel their best. Generally, if you look back, most women during ovulation week have the least amount of PMS, they have the least amount of symptoms, they feel bright, they feel shiny, they feel out. And this is our way of attracting a mate, right? This is nature's way of making a woman want to attract or receive sperm. Is pretty much how it goes. So, and estrogen is a big reason why we feel amazing. Now, if women are very estrogen dominant or struggle with estrogen detox, they might have a different story to tell. They might be like, ovulation's my least favorite time. And it's like, okay, because you're having issues with a high estrogen state. That's really good information. That's super treatable with detox, with moving things through, understanding your genetic pathways and kind of troubleshooting that. But in general, most women feel their slimmest, their trimmest, their happiest, their best during ovulation. And as those hormones, as our ovaries, the lights dim down on our ovaries, as we age, we just become less estrogenic. That can show up as not feeling juicy, really, like feeling dry in the skin. So some women will come in and say to me, "Oh my God, I just feel like I aged like 10 years in the last year." And that's because literally estrogen is going away. It's making it so that your skin isn't, my skin looks great right now because of the Zoom filter. Thank you, Zoom. But it's always a work for us to keep our skin looking really plump, and estrogen on the skin as we age is definitely a treatment. So we'll talk about that more during the detox. And if you guys did our skin program, we talked about estrogen a lot in the skin. So, but it's also juiciness vaginally, that's dryness. I have some patients who come in and say, sex feels very painful. It feels like glass. That is like never okay. It's a low estrogen state that your vaginal tissue needs to be really kind of soft and moistened. Estrogen works in our brain to make it juicy. Our brain is meant to be very fluid, very, like I said, juicy, not dry. And the estrogen has a big part of that. So women will recognize in their 40s that, and it can hit us at different times when we're starting to have word recall issues, or you walk into your kitchen and you can't remember why. And estrogen is a huge part of that puzzle. So supporting our brain health, supporting our mood stabilization, estrogen is a huge medicine in that way. It protects our bones, it protects our vessels. So it is a massive protector of women. Many of us were treated with birth control. Okay, I just turned 50, so if you're watching this in my generation, many of us were treated with birth control when we were young for a variety of things. If you bled too little, if you bled too much, obviously, if you needed birth control for not getting pregnant. So the birth control, what it does is it just gives you a steady state of hormone all the way through. It's a fake estrogen, if you will. It fakes your brain. It shuts down the ovaries' production of estrogen so that you're not ovulating. It shuts down ovulation. Many of us were put on low dose hormones, and we are seeing now the impact on our bones. Some of us have osteopenia and osteoporosis from previous early birth control taking. So if you were on birth control, if you're a woman that was like, I was on birth control for 25 years and or whatever the case was for you, it would be a really good idea to think about your bone health and really think about how much estrogen you need going forward to help kind of protect your bone structure and your brain. So I love estrogen. I love working with it. I love using it for many, many things. When women come in and they say, I'm foggy, I'm tired, I'm bitchy, I'm having hot flashes, I'm having night sweats, those are telltale signs of estrogen deficiency, the heat that we make. It's like we're dry and shriveling essentially. So we're trying to cool the waters. I love working with estrogen. Obviously, if you're one of my patients, you'll know that I'm a big advocate for hormones and hormone replacement therapy done safely and done really well, and ensuring that we are detoxing these estrogens that we use long term. Many people's doctors will say at 60 you have to be done, or many doctors are still prescribing birth control pills for women after they've had their babies. Obviously, there's a period if you've done with your fertility journey and still ovulating that you need some birth control. So that needs to be part of the conversation. But I'm not an advocate for birth control pills for menopause management. I really love bioidentical hormones, which is different than birth control. Birth control uses synthetic hormones. Bioidentical means that the hormones you take are the hormones you make. And they're much, thank God, finally there's the hormone revolution. Naturopathic doctors were always knowing that hormones weren't nearly as bad as the world was saying, because again, we make these things. So if we can work with them naturally, use them in like the management, or your physician's telling you that you don't have access to birth con to, I'm sorry, to hormone replacement therapy or bioidentical hormones until you're fully in menopause, you're getting misinformed. And so you get to find a different provider, because that's not true. I'm using estrogen in a lot of my women in their 40s. I'm 50. I'm not yet menopausal. I've been on estrogen for several years because it helps me do my work. It helps me get up and do these talks, and it helps me have energy and feel really good in my life. So you don't have to wait. We use things, like I said, in really smart ways. And then we are going to help our body's detox systems so that we don't get estrogen dominant or sort of estrogen toxic. Yeah. And the adrenal glands you've heard us talk about adrenal glands, and those are the stress hormones. So one thing that happens is as the ovaries making less estrogen, and that can happen like in your 30s if you go through a car accident, a death of a family member, like a major stressor or trauma. Some women will lose their period for time. Some people will go into early menopause. Those patients need to be most thoughtful about hormone replacement therapy because they had a short of estrogen protection. So if that's you, if you lost your period in your 40s, or if you had what we call, ovarian insufficiency early on, then you want to make sure you're getting really protected and speaking with a provider that understands the importance to protect your vital organs later. But estrogen will come and go in our lives. And obviously, if we're using birth control, it will do that too. If women are using more now, a lot of women are using IUDs. That is not impacting estrogen. I like an IUD in many ways because for older women that don't have really hard bleeding, I like copper IUDs because they're non-hormonal, so we can play with hormones on top of it. But estrogen comes in a lot of different ways, shapes, creams, patches, rings, oral capsules. So, and many of these are bioidentical. It's a complicated thing. During the detox, I will do sort of a special report on all the different ways of getting hormones for those people on our detox that aren't our patients. So if you want to be able to ask questions or understand so that you can ask your provider, because a lot of times, obviously in doctor visits, Kara started this whole hormone sequence talking about a doctor's visit that kind of, went a little bit of awry. The provider wasn't as savvy or sophisticated or understanding things about hormones. And so she did her best, but it wasn't for the patient's best. So that's a really good example. It doesn't mean your providers are bad. And OBs, I love OBs. They do things I could never do. I could never remove a fibroid. I could never remove a polyp. I can't do a C-section. I don't know how to do surgery. Those guys are miracle workers. I had 2 C-sections. I love modern gynecology and medicine, but your gynecologist is a surgeon. It doesn't necessarily mean he or she is really into hormones. So, and then it's really interesting because some people have endocrinologists to manage their thyroid if they have Hashimoto's or thyroid hypothyroidism, and endocrinologists don't do a lot with hormones. So there's a big gaping hole in medicine, and obviously that's what everybody's screaming about online. And and we don't need to throw the doctors out. It wasn't that nobody's bad. We just have to find the people that are savvy about it, right? So the most interesting thing about estrogen is our genetics and how our genetics really influence estrogen. So I wish Kara was here because Kara suffered from estrogen dominance. Anybody that knows or works with us have probably heard her story. She had endometriosis. So people who have endometriosis or fibroids or really like tons of fibrocystic breasts or hugely dense breast tissue, sometimes you might have some estrogen dominance. And that means that in these really complicated pathways of hormones that we have in our bodies, they tend to be estrogen dominant. I am testosterone dominant. So if you give me estrogen, I make testosterone. So I had something called PCOS, and all these things needed to be balanced. And both Kara and I did it with diet. Both Kara and I had what we talked about yesterday, progesterone deficiencies, but for different reasons. So we needed different herbs, and we have very different styles and personalities. We needed different medicine. Yeah, I needed to run, she needed to meditate, right? Like they're just like different things that affect different bodies. So estrogen's very complicated. So if you had the experience of being on the birth control pill and it was horrible for you, or you have horrible periods, or you never felt good, you feel very hormonal, or you had really tough pregnancies, or you had fertility issues, you're going to need a little bit more care in your perimenopause, menopause therapies. Like it may not be that just slapping on a patch, the traditional way is going to work for you, and figuring out your detox pathways is going to really support that part of your journey so that you can be on these things for lifelong. At this point, ladies, the research is looking like we should just be on these things long standing. The women who aren't candidates as of now for estrogen hormone replacement therapy are breast cancer, estrogen positive breast cancer survivors. I believe that's going to change. I believe that the research is coming and people are understanding that cancer is multifactorial, and I think that's going to change. Though women who had estrogen sensitive breast cancers are candidates for local vaginal estrogen to protect her health there. So this is a big old issue and a big topic. And if you're feeling like, well, one, if you're just a woman in your 40s, your estrogen's changing. So that's just happening. So whether you're on a fertility journey in your 40s or you're done with having kids or never had kids and you're trying to support your hormones, it is changing. So this is the thing where many women will come and say, well, I'm not in menopause yet, so nothing's changed, so I must be depressed. And I'm like, no, I mean, perimenopause is defined as it's a 10-year hormone change that happens slowly over time. And nothing goes like this. It's not a change like that. It's like, that's just what the body does. We're not linear creatures. We are very fluid and changeable creatures. So if you're having any, really truly any medical symptom in your 40s, or even late 30s, I feel like understanding what your hormone role, what's happening hormonally, adrenal, thyroid, estrogen, progesterone, is so important rather than just treating the symptom. And it may be that your hormones look great and it's not an issue, but it may be that the decline in hormone, I talked about it a little bit yesterday, that you still have it, but you might not have as much, and that decline might be enough to be triggering a symptom. Joint pain, stiffness, fatigue, depression, ADD. Everyone comes and says, I have adult ADD. And like, that's just what happens when we don't have as much estrogen on our brain. We're like, you know, we feel like we can't handle as many things. We feel less resourced. Um, yeah, look at I love I just pulled up the chat. Somebody was saying I used to feel the best during ovulation, and in my 40s, I'm not feeling that's when I feel the most in the worst. And so that's like a really speaks to that there's probably some other mechanism happening there that you're not detoxing as well. There may be an infection. We see a lot of patients with mold exposures or living in kind of homes that are moldy that can have influences on their estrogen pathways. So some of those things where it's like you've noticed a change, that can really lead us to uncover what else is happening in your life or what exposures you've had that's creating a little bit of hormone imbalance. And sometimes if people don't feel as well during ovulation, there's thyroid or adrenal issues. Um, so I'm just looking at some of the questions. Can I talk about how viruses can impact estrogen? Well, COVID was such a fabulous example for us to see. There were so many menstrual changes that happened with COVID. And it was really fascinating to see and to witness and to manage. Some women would lose their period. Some women would bleed like crazy post-vaccination. So it was that the spike protein from COVID is part of what was doing it. So some people had symptoms post-vaccination. Some people had it post live virus when they actually had COVID. Some both. Some had no menstrual issues. But it's a really interesting thing. Viruses themselves can work on our system in a couple ways. One, they can act as a major stressor. So, and these are things like COVID that are multi-systemic and multifactorial, and many of the childhood viruses. So like if we get a childhood virus when we're an adult, like slap cheek, I don't know if many of you guys had erythema when slap cheek when your kids were little. If you get it as an adult, man, oh man, it can super screw you up. Joint pain, a lot of different things, and it's really affecting your estrogen symptoms. And one, it's because it's a major stress. So anytime our body's coming up on a major stress, our adrenals get involved, and that immediately will impact estrogen, progesterone, thyroid. They don't work in silos. They're not in their own lanes. They're all exchanging information, and the brain is trying to control and turn things on or off. So if you're under a major stressor, your ovary can also start to underproduce. You can have less estrogen because resources are going towards fighting an infection versus essentially your fertility. When the organism is under any kind of stress, our fertility is put on the back burner. And that's why many people on a fertility journey, Kara and I are trying to really discover, do these women have hidden infections? Are there long-term viruses that they're being exposed to and not clearing? Long COVID, Epstein-Barr virus, some of these herpes viruses that live in us, chickenpox, shingles, they live in us. Our immune system keeps them at bay until we get stressed, tired, or another sickness, and then boom, there's a big flare. So if you're having a lot of menstrual irregularities and flu-like symptoms, especially some women will have flu-like symptoms right before their period, then it really feels like, okay, there is probably an underlying infection, viral or could be Lyme bacterial. Those are kinds of some of the things that we think about when patients really show up with sort of cyclical flu-like symptoms, or one of the pieces of the puzzles that we're trying to figure out if there's menstrual issues or fertility issues. Okay, sorry, there was a question here about the detox. During the detox, will you be addressing more in terms of detoxing hormones if necessary? Yes. Yeah. I know this patient saying, I'm one of those that can't just slap on a patch. So, but needs the HRT, but delicate with, I put on the HRT, I get symptomatic or I start to bleed. So yes, we will really be talking about estrogen detox pathways, foods that support the estrogen detox pathways, physical medicine that supports the estrogen detox. And then if you've done a genetic test with us previously, we can really look at your genes and get a better understanding during that time. For those of you guys, just to break it down, Kara and I have a community called the Empowered Women's Collective. If you're in our Empowered Women's Collective, which is we meet twice monthly about a major health topic. Next year, we're slowing it down. We're going to cover a little, we're going to do a deeper dive at a slower pace. If you're part of the collective, you're just automatically part of our detox. Hooray. If you're not, if you want to do the detox, you can join the collective and you don't pay for the detox. And then you're part of it. And we will be doing hormone testing together in the collective November, December, as soon as we're through our GI testing. We're all doing GI testing right now, and we're still in that kind of phase that will bring us through the detox, and then we'll do some hormone testing. So if you're a patient that's like, I'm on HRT, but it's not totally working for me, or I've really screwed up cycles, doing some hormone testing, some urine hormone testing that looks at our detox pathways can be really helpful. How about low estrogen if HRT is not an option? I don't know exactly, sorry, I can't tell exactly what that question's asking about, but I'm assuming that if HRT is not an option for you and you're going to have low estrogen, I mean, we will all lose our estrogen. Usually the average age is 52 or it's by 54. I'm always testing my patients like we talked about in the beginning, FSH, estradiol, day 3, to see what where's your status in menopause, what's happening with your estrogen. If HRT is not an issue for you, then we want to have conversations around protecting still potentially your skin and your vaginal tissue and your vaginal architecture with really low dose estrogens. If that becomes an issue, many women will have vaginal dryness. Not every woman's going to get every perimenopause or menopausal symptom, but it may be that the vaginal dryness changes in your 60s or you start to get recurrent UTIs. That's a very common thing for women who are not treated with hormones. So you want to kind of think about different options. And there's a lot of beautiful herbs to help. So tomorrow, I think what we'll do tomorrow and Saturday is talk about some herbs that are supportive. We're going to do this a lot in the detox. So the detox is we're going to be drinking a really beautiful tea every day that's supportive for detox pathways for hormones specifically. And it's really interesting to see just using herbal medicine and herbal detoxification, how hormones can feel better for you during your potentially hormone sticky time. So the person who wrote into the chat that ovulation used to be her favorite time, now it's her worst, adding in some detox strategies during that time will help mitigate your symptoms. So that can be drinking some of these hormone detox teas, using the physical medicine, and really understanding that, oh, I need more detox at this time. And not everybody wants to do everything with capsules and pills. So using some of these foods, what foods can I use? What herbs can I use? What teas can I drink? What physical medicine can I use? That's the whole fun game of our detoxes, is bringing it back to basics in food. It's a really great way women feel like they learn a lot and hit the reset button. And I have some people who have done 15 detoxes with me, and each one they learn something a little different or take it a layer deeper or do something different. So it's, it's just a great thing to reset. All right, I'm sorry, I talked your ears off. We kind of went over, but much love. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. Hang in there, everybody. If you're in California, it's super hot. Stay hydrated, drink an electrolyte, take good care of yourselves, and get good rest. If you're hot and having hot flashes at night, it's definitely happening for all of us right now with this heat. So drink, 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 stay hydrated. Much love. Talk soon. Bye. And sign up for our detox